Representative Corry, the 2022 legislative session got underway this week. Can you share some of the details of the House operations?
That's a great question. We were planning on being back in person this session, but unfortunately, the surge in Omicron prompted House leadership to move us to a virtual session, basically, at least for the foreseeable future, which means all of our committee hearings and even our floor work will be done virtually. I have been a big champion and proponent of safely getting us back into the Olympia. I believe it's a better way for us to legislate. I think it's what the people want and expect from us. We've seen business and schools and a variety of other places go back to in-person. There's no reason why we can't safely do that as well. So one of my priorities will be continuing to try to get us back in person so we can meet to do the people's business.
The next 60 days will be filled with a lot of discussions, debates, and decisions on some really tough public policy issues. Can you talk about some of the hot topics this legislative session?
Absolutely. Thank you. So this session is a 60-day session. It's a short session, which typically means we don't tackle a lot of really big issues. However, there were some issues that were created by the legislature in prior sessions that are forcing us back to deal with them. Things like the Long-Term Care Act, which was a poorly conceived and improperly planned out tax on people to fund long-term care. And we argued these problems months and years ago, and they were ignored. So here we are now having to fix them as this large burden is being shifted onto employees and employers. Police reform, you've no doubt seen how some of the bad police reform measures last year have ended up hurting communities with police that are unable to do their jobs. And it's in large part due to a legislature that hastily and without a full understanding of how law enforcement works, crafted legislation telling them what they could and couldn't do. Unfortunately, we also argued against that and said these were the problems that were going to happen if you did this. And sure enough, they've come to fruition. So we're dealing with that. And, lastly, I think one of the big things that we really need to focus on is emergency powers reform. We've been living under the governor's state of emergency for almost 2 years now. Washington State has very broad emergency powers for the governor. And unfortunately, one of the things that is lacking in there is any legislative oversight or limit. And as we've seen, and as no doubt people have heard, a lot of times the legislature can't do anything to affect change or influence the governor's decisions in what constitutes policy during this emergency. So I have introduced House Bill 1772, which is bipartisan and seeks to basically restore some basic limits on emergency power. It allows the legislature a check on the governor after 60 days to determine, do we need to keep this state of emergency? Only, under current law, only he has the power to rescind that emergency order. And we don't think that that is the right way to govern. And we think it tramples and violates, separation of powers as those emergency orders continue and go on and on forever.